Hello, everybody. This is your old pal, Uncle Hondo, with a very important coaching update for Wednesday as the Raiders go through their general manager and coaching searches. We're going to have some significant updates for you there. We're also going to look at the Raiders quarterback situation. We're going to get under there, and I expect to have some very interesting information from there. We're going to talk about assistant coaches, and we're going to talk about Al Davis and the national Al Davis, and additionally, we're going to talk about the national narrative on a subject. I want to start with the national narrative, and I want you to know because I've told you this many times. I'm not a Raider fan, but I'm certainly not a Raider hater. After 20 years of covering the Big Ten, I moved to cover the Raiders because of my relationship and friendship with Matt Millen and the way that he talks so highly of Raider Nation, and now been covering the Raiders for 6 years. I have tremendous respect for the franchise, for Mark, um, and for many of the players and coaches who I've gotten to know on a personal basis. But I remember when I first started covering, and again, I want you to stick with me because we have a significant coaching update, quarterback update, and assistant coaches. But I want to get this out there because I'm frustrated. And most of you know that's not who I am. It's not really where I operate. But when I first got here, and Raider fans would be like, the refs hate us, the NFL hates us, whatever. And I knew that the NFL, when Al Davis was in his prime fight with them, were not fans. I knew that factually. I knew that from people at the NFL. But I thought, man, they oversell this a little bit. They've been the victim so long. I think that they play that a little bit. But over time, I have talked to you about errors and things I've seen, but I've never seen the narrative as clearly as I have this week. And now a lot of what Raider fan believes is making sense to me. So let me give you an example. 4 weeks ago, Mike Vrabel was very much on the Raiders' radar if Antonio Pierce was going to be let go. I told you back in September that. In fact, I was the first to mention it. And now he takes the job with New England. Oh, yeah, it was never an issue with me. I always wanted New England. Well, I'm going to call timeout here. Now, in the interest of fair disclosure, and I have no problem giving credit where credit's due, my buddies Vic Tafer and Tashawn Reed from The Athletic were the first to report about Mark Davis saying no on wanting to go back the Patriot way with Vrabel. I have since been able to talk to people inside the organization and get that confirmed as well. So I'm confirming it. I'm not pretending I reported it first. They did, and they deserve the credit for that. It was great reporting. But Mike Vrabel didn't get an interview. Mike Vrabel didn't get the opportunity to take the Raiders because of Mark Davis. So let's not pretend, and I know that this is the national narrative, but I just don't want people to pretend like, oh, gee, the Raiders lost out again. There was strong interest when it came to Vrabel, but the strong interest wasn't from Mark Davis. Okay. I think Mark deserves some credit there. And I'm going to be honest. I said it all along. I thought going with Vrabel was a viable option because of his success, but I did not think it was something that was going to work just for a number of reasons. I don't dislike Vrabel at all, but I just not for a bunch of reasons. But that national narrative, well, the Raiders lost out on Vrabel because the Patriots were so appealing. No, the Raiders lost out on Vrabel because Mark Davis said, we're not doing the Patriot way again. Hey, Tom Brady's an owner. I love Tom Brady. I love the Brady way, but the Patriot way isn't the Patriot way. I want a Raider way. And I think Mark deserves a lot of credit. And I don't appreciate the national narrative. Now, I have said to you, all along that I thought in 8 days, a week from tomorrow, which would be Thursday, that's kind of the window that you could expect the Raiders to maybe pick their coach. I want to revise that a little bit. I don't think the Raiders will pick a coach till after the Lions are out of the playoffs. So I think the time, so it could be a while, could be after a Super Bowl, but I don't think the Raiders will pick a coach until uh, the Lions are out of the Super Bowl. Now, I'm going to have an update in a minute on assistant coaches and quarterbacks, so stay with me. I was talking, Shannon and I were in the car last night, I guess it was, and I was talking to an NFL executive, and I want to share this with you because I thought it was fascinating. Um, and we were talking about Deion and the interest he had with the Raiders, but the Raiders were not interested in Deion. And he said to me, and I thought because it's a Raider thing here, I thought you'd appreciate it. He said, I think what we're seeing with Jerry Jones is what we saw with Al Davis at the end. And he goes, I don't think they can get out of their own way. And there's nobody in the organization strong enough to tell them that. I thought that was fascinating. Now, the person did say to me, I don't think Jerry Jones knows football half as much as Al. He goes, I do think he knows it, but I don't think he knows it as much as Al. So as I'm watching what's going on in Dallas, I found that fascinating that an NFL executive who knew Al Davis well and knows Jerry kind of parlayed that. All right, now I'm going to talk about the future at Raiders quarterback. There are a lot of people around the NFL who do not believe there is a quarterback in this draft worthy of a top 15 pick. A lot of people. A lot of people. And I find that to be very interesting. And so I have a question for you. If by some chance the Raiders were to hire Ben Johnson, who is the front runner, I'm the one that told you that he is the guy. Ben Johnson is clearly their number one target. What would you think of a trade for Hendon Hooker? He's got a couple years experience in the Ben Johnson system. So he comes in, he hasn't started, but he comes in, instantly becomes the compete for a, you could still go draft a guy. You still have Aiden there. So he instantly competes. I think he's clearly the favorite, but he already knows the Ben Johnson system. And what if you get him for a second or whatever you get him for? I think that's fascinating. I think that's fascinating. I don't think it's getting enough attention. So I'm throwing it out there in the podcast world. I think that's a very viable option for the Raiders. I'm not in any way reporting it's done. I mean, the Detroit would have to want to do the deal. But I think if the Raiders were to get Ben Johnson, and he's clearly the front runner, and I do not believe they will pick a coach at this time unless one thing changes, and it's not another candidate. I would expect them to not name a coach till after the playoffs. And what if it is Ben Johnson? I don't think the Hendon Hooker play. Now, I know for a fact when Hendon was in the draft, the Raiders really liked him. Now, it's not the Raiders that were there then, but they really liked him. So this is an organization that, even though the new folks maybe are not as aware of Hendon, but those who've been around a while, Champ, others, are very aware of him. I think that is an extremely viable option. Extremely viable option. And I think it is certainly on the radar, and it's not it's certainly a possibility that I think a lot of people need to be talking about. You get to bring a guy in who already knows the new system, a guy who's already been in the league. He's got to watch Jared Goff. There's a lot there. There is a lot there. And then the Raiders keep their number 6 pick. Maybe you stay right there and select a corner out of Michigan who, bam, instantly upgrades your cornerbacks. Maybe you go a lineman. A lot of those in this draft. So many options. So many options. And remember that pick for Hendon Hooker. If you give a second for Hendon, that's a high second. Quite frankly, you can look at that because there's so many bad drafting teams as a cheaper first round guy. I think it's a real possibility. And I did not come up with that on my own. That was intimated to me. So we'll see. Next, I want to talk about Robbie Leonard. He is the Raiders' defensive line coach. He is a superstar on the rise. This guy has done wonders. He's been under the tutelage of Patrick Graham. This is a guy that has, look at all of look at Caleb Chason. Look at the growth of Tyree. Adam Butler. Max has thoroughly prospered under his leadership and others. I think, and I'm going to put this out there because I think it's important, whoever the next coach is, and because I think Ben Johnson is the front runner, and because I believe that is, we were the first to report that, and we were the first to talk about that narrative. I think the smartest thing in the world Ben Johnson could do is say, hey, Robbie Leonard, will you stay and be my defensive coordinator? I think that bodes well for the rest of the team. The defense loves Patrick. Not even saying that they're not, but I think Patrick's going to move on. I don't want that for him. I want him to get a head coaching job, but he doesn't. I'd love to see him stay in Vegas, but I get it. But Robbie Leonard is loved by offensive and defensive guys, and that is you're bringing in a new guy and you're keeping, as Ben Johnson is a hot shot, very well respected, up and coming offensive savant. Robbie Leonard is looked at the same way on defense. If you get a absolute stud like a Robbie Leonard, now there's going to be a learning curve. But I don't think it's as big of a learning curve as others do. He's been groomed for it. I know how much. I'm going to do a whole podcast on Robbie Leonard coming up here soon. But I know exactly the influence he's had in meetings. He's conducted himself like a coordinator. Patrick Graham has treated him as such. Robbie Leonard owes Patrick Graham a lot because he earned Patrick Graham's respect, and then Patrick really let him have a huge impact. So I want you thinking about that. A Robbie Leonard, excuse me, a Robbie Leonard being promoted to DC, Ben Johnson as a coach. All of a sudden now you get a Spytek as a GM, or the gentleman from Green Bay, or maybe a Sheldon White from Pittsburgh. Spytek, though, is the front runner. A Ben Johnson, and then you get a Hendon Hooker. Told you all along, it is not a rebuild. It is a reload. And then you keep on that number 6 pick to go get an immediate impact player. Come on, somebody. I'm just telling you. I think the future for the Raiders is incredibly bright. And I think there should be a lot of I understand why there's none. But I understand why fans are frustrated, and I get all of it, and I respect it. But as somebody who is a neutral observer, I think there's a lot of reasons for you to be fired up and excited. There's been a lot of information packed in today's coaching and GM search update. I appreciate you guys. I'm doing my best. I am working the phones. I want to give a big shout out to my wife, Shannon. Ooh, she said to me the other day, she goes, "You're always busy, but man, in the middle of this coaching and GM stuff, you are on the phone all the time." And I told her, I said, "I appreciate you recognizing that." So I want to give a shout out to my wife. What an incredible helpmate that she is to me. But great information there. I told you yesterday, I thought I was going to have some more today. And I wouldn't be surprised if I have a little bit more on Thursday and Friday as well along these lines. But the future is very bright. I'm going to have some interesting quotes for you, probably on the Friday update, could be on Saturday, and you'll understand why on that day. But Mark Davis is impressing a lot of people, and I'm going to tell you why. So, a lot going on with the Raiders again. Hendon Hooker, possibility at quarterback, a real possibility. Robbie Leonard promoted to defensive coordinator. Ben Johnson in the driver's seat. So much going on. Again, we talked about Robbie. And just remember the national narrative that I addressed with Vrabel. And then, of course, the Jerry Jones mirroring some stuff off of Al Davis. I thought that was fascinating. So, from all of us to all of you, thank you for listening today. Thanks for enjoying our update. Greatly appreciate all of you and what you do for us. You guys make covering this team great. Remember, we're doing 15 to 24 articles a day. We're bringing you all the latest information. And you know what? A lot of it I may not agree with, but I'm still presenting it to you. We're not Pravda, the old, for those of you that remember the Cold War era, the Russian propaganda newspaper. Even if we disagree with something, it's out there in a general report. We're going to present it to you. We're giving it all to you. And you know that's why you go to si.com/NFL/Raiders. I appreciate all of you. I'm grateful for you. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day.